So for number 11 through 14, it's all about normal distribution, and we know normal distribution means that normal distribution curve with a bell curve. Within 1 SD is 68.2% of your data, within 2 SDs is 95.4%, and within 3 SDs is 99.8% of your data, leaving 0.1 on either side. Note that with anything with normal distribution, the scores least likely to occur on the ones furthest away from the mean. The scores most likely to occur are closest to the mean. In this particular question, number 11, well, it told you that this represents around 95% of your data, which means within 2 standard deviations. Now, within 2 is very powerful. It means 2 to the left and 2 to the right, which is a total of 4 standard deviations. So if I take the range, which is the distance between 92 and 78, or 14, and I divide by the total number of standard deviations of 4, that will give me what each one of them is. Now, if you wanted to check this to see that your answer is 3.5, if you keep adding 3.5 as you go to the right, it will bring you to 92. Note that I have my standard deviations with dots so I can distinguish between what's a full SD and a half SD. That's just something that I do. That happened to be choice 1. With number 12, they gave me that the mean was 80 in this normal distribution, and the standard deviation is 4, which would make a half a standard deviation 2. And I want to know the percentage between 74 and 82. So 80, if I go one to the left, it's 76. If I went another one to the left, it would have brought me to 72. So going half a standard deviation is where I want to be. So now the 82 is going to be to the right. If I go one full one to the right, it's going to bring me to 84. Too far. So I go a half to the right, and that is all the percentages that I need. Now you find all these percentages on the reference table. I mean, most students will have them memorized after a while, but you're welcome to look them up. So this is 19.1, 19.1, 15, and 19.2, which I add them all up to get 62.4% of my data. If this were a probability question, you could have said the probability of the scores being between 74 and 82 is 62.4% as well. Next question is question 13, if I can find it. Okay. And there we go, another normal distribution. This one I assigned because it talked about there being 1,200, I think it's students, let me just check. Yeah, 1,200 students taking a test under this curve where the mean was 75, and they wanted to know the total number of students that score between 69 and 81. Well, if the standard deviation is 6, it's very convenient that it was 1 to the left and 1 to the right, which happens to be 68.2% of my data. If I wanted to add up the 15, the 19.1, the 19.1, and the 15, I would get that percentage. You have a choice. You could do your is over of equal percent over 100 thing, which is x over 1,200 equals 68.2 over 100. Or you can just multiply 0.682 times 1,200 to get your approximation. And the one closest to it was 816. The last normal distribution one is percentile. And I think out of anything with this whole stat unit, that's the question that students most ask me how to do. And you have to remember percentile means. When you're looking at percentile, you always start at the left, and where you stop on the curve is your percentile rank. So if I asked you what's the percentile of 43 for question number 14, since 43 is the mean, it's the 50th percentile because it's halfway through the bell curve. Now they want to know which score is approximately the 90th percentile. So I have to keep on slicing to the right here until I find around the 90th percentile. So you can see here at 43 it's 50. 1 to the right would bring me to 49.3 because the standard deviation is 6.3. So I do the 43 plus the 6.3 to get my 49.3. Now those percentages are 19.1 and 15. So when I add up the 50, the 19.1, and the 15, that brings me to approximately the 84th percentile, 84.1. So 90 is going to be a little bit to the right. So I went over a half standard deviation, not realizing that my choices were a little bit easier than I thought. My choices were okay if I went over a full standard deviation, because they want me to tell them that it's between 49.3 and 55.6. You can see what I did in this diagram here. I said, okay, if the full standard deviation is 6.3, then half is 3.15. So I got 1 to the right here, which is approximately 52.45. So when I add the 9.2 onto the 84.1, I get my 93.3 percentile. So I know my score definitely has to be in between here, but this particular interval that they listed in choice 4 satisfied that. So remember percentile, you start at the left. Percentile rank is where you stop. If you stop before x bar, the mean, you're going to be less than the 50th percentile. If you stop to the right of x bar or greater than the mean, you're going to be greater than the 50th percentile.